Okay, the format of this meeting is a 10-minute speaker, our secretary's announcements, a coffee break and snack break, and our main speaker. Our first speaker for tonight is Susan.
Hi, my name is Susie, and I'm an alcoholic. I'm kind of in a funny mood right now, especially because of the shenanigans and the, 4-hour drive, maybe? something like that. First of all, I would like to thank Kevin for inviting me to come in here and open this up for him and share with you guys for 10 minutes. And I'd like to thank this group for being so welcoming. One of the first things that I notice when I walk in here is not only the smiling faces and welcoming, but the fact that your sign says it's a safe place. Right? AA is a safe place. It became a safe place for me. I have a sobriety date of March 18th, 2018. I have a sponsor. She has a sponsor. My sponsor lovingly took me through the first 164 pages of this book. There are women that I sponsor, and I have a home group. And I have commitments at my home group, right? If I can put in that whole mix in one way or another throughout the day, there's a pretty good chance that I'm going to stay. I can guarantee that. It's a total combination that works for me, and I hope that it works for you, especially the newcomers. So welcome to all you guys. I can tell you I came in here, on a court card back in October of 2017. I have a pretty good streak going. I'm going to try and keep it. So that's why I try to mix in that combination. I'm a very competitive person. That's why I bring up the whole streak. Because it's important to me, right? Like, I got to be the best at everything, right? Except for drinking. I was not very good at that. I mean, I was good at it, but, it wasn't good to me. I'm a little nervous. I don't know if it's the camera right here or the Zoom or something or whatever it is, but, it's an honor and a privilege to come in here and to share a little bit of my experience, strength, and hope, especially in a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous, especially where there's a group. I did say that I have a home group. That's the Inland Group. We meet in Redlands on Monday night. And the reason that I love the fact that it's a group is because we carry Tradition 5 very, very much in like the depths of our heart, right? Our primary purpose is to carry the message to the alcoholic who still suffers. Right? And I was an alcoholic who was suffering very much when I came into these rooms. But I don't think that my perception of that is that the alcoholic who still suffers is only the newcomer, because I've seen people with 30, 40 years of sobriety who are going through it, whether they lost a parent or they lost a spouse or they lost a child. Those are the people that we continue to carry the message to, and those are the people that welcomed me with loving and caring arms. And for that, I'm grateful. So very quickly, I'm going to run it down, what it was like, what happened, and what it's like now. So you can tell the way I open, you can pretty much tell what it's like now. I have a life that's beyond my wildest dreams. Couldn't be happier than the life I have. I grew up in a pretty normal household, although I didn't think so when I was a young kid, I didn't think anything that my parents did was normal, like having jobs, having food on the table at a certain hour, asking us to do things like chores, go to school. I thought they had a very strange life. Their responsibility and their level of responsibility, it dumbfounded me, right? I also had the attitude that any child should have growing up in a home when you're a single child. Absolutely. All the attention had to be on me. I was self-centered to the frickin' core, which is probably why my brothers and sisters didn't like me growing up, But I had that self-centered attitude. I can tell you I took my first drink probably about 14, 15 years old. My cousin Gary and I kind of noticed what alcohol did and the effects that alcohol had on family members. Friday poker nights would start out really easy. My uncles would walk in with their coolers. Next thing you know, they're playing poker. The pot's getting bigger. They're getting drunker. Aunts and uncles are fighting in the streets. It was just complete chaos every Friday and Saturday night, right? So my cousin and I had this bright idea that maybe if we take a couple of their beers, they drink less, they don't fight. I didn't know what was in those cans. I know that my first drink was warm beer. I didn't care for it. That's not what kicked in the phenomena of craving. Nor did it lead me on any stretch of any type of disastrous debacles or pitiful and incomprehensible demoralization. That part of my life would start when I was 17 years old, right? 17 years old, I moved out of my home. I decided that I was an adult. I wasn't going to listen to my parents. I had no interest in doing what they asked me to do. And I moved out. I was given an option. Back what I heard was, you're no good, we can't have you, you're out of control, you're doing things we don't agree with, get out. When they, realistically, all they were telling me, and in retrospect, what I know now is go to school, come home on time. When the street lights come on, you should be inside. I just aged myself, but it's true, right? But I left that house with a chip on my shoulder, walked out of that house with a bag on my backpack, and I moved a whole block away, right? I like to say that story because we lived on this side of the tracks, so if I lived on this side of the tracks a block away, I was better than them, right? So I moved out of that house, barely finishing high school, trying to give up, every sense of family that I had in my life, and I set out to do some not so great things, right? I can tell you that I started getting into nightclubs and bars at around 17 years old, started drinking beyond my own body, capacity, right? I never knew what one drink would do for me because I never only stopped at one. I only knew how to have 10 to 12, right? I only knew how to always overshoot the mark. I was a blackout drinker. I vomited all over the place, right? I'm that girl that woke up on the side of the alley at the liquor store, with a full bottle in my hand. I'm also the woman who would wake up in the middle of the morning, couldn't find your phone, couldn't find anything, couldn't make it to work, had every excuse not to get there. I'm also the girl who got arrested multiple times. Favorite part of that is I got 2 DUIs within 3 years in the same city, on the same street, arrested by the same cop, right? Not only did they know me by first name, they knew my middle name, and I was like, just use the fingerprints from the last time. I have not changed one bit, right? In 2017 is when I picked up my last DUI. That's where my drinking took me, right? It took me to some dark places. I was definitely, still had a little bit of a chip on my shoulder from that 17-year-old girl who left that house, but I guarantee you I was in much worse shape, right? I believe in Alcoholics Anonymous. I love what Alcoholics Anonymous has done for me. I love what it's done for my family. And not just the fact that my family now has their daughter back, but just there's certain facts about my life in the longer version of my story that really, really, really gives me a sense of love and admiration for the people in here, the people who are courageous enough to walk in and raise their hand. Whether you have 3 days, 30 days, 40 years, 30 years, whether you're a chronic relapser, the fact that you're coming in here and you're raising your hand is absolutely beautiful, right? So in October of 2017 is when I picked up my last DUI. I swore to the judge and to the lawyer, who actually 12-stepped me, that I did not have a drinking problem, I had a driving problem, and that I was not to drive on Foothill Boulevard, and I was to stay away from the city of Claremont. Those were my solutions, right? And I came to AA meetings with a get out of jail for, we'll just call it a court card. I came in on a court card, right? I turned that court card from October of 2017 to March of 2018, I turned that in for a get out of jail free card, stay out of jail free card, right? What I didn't realize is that, turning that in and being where I'm at today was going to make such huge differences in my life. But I look around and I see the friends that I have. None of those friends were with me when I went to court. Not the first time, not the second time, not the third time. It was actually my sponsor who was there with me when I turned myself in. She watched me get handcuffed. She watched me get walked away. She watched me get put on a bus. She watched me get sent to jail. There was 5 months leading up to that point before I actually surrendered, where I thought the first 31 years of my drinking was bad, but that last 5 months was horrible. I wouldn't wish it on anybody, In that 5 months in Pomona, thank God, as opposed to Claremont, I got picked up for close to 8 drunken publics because I wouldn't drive, right? But I'd walk, right? That's when you're trying to walk 4 miles home from a bar at 3 a.m, it's pretty difficult to do. I couldn't do that after one drink, let alone 15, right? But, I came into Alcoholics Anonymous, like I said, in October of 2017. I wasn't hearing anything. I was sitting on my hands and I was hiding in the corner. All I cared about was getting my court card signed, right? But I started getting tired. My body started getting weary. I started running out of excuses. I started going to more meetings, and not just going to the meetings, but actually walking through the greeting line and letting people love me, right? Accept me, and love me not so that I can love myself, but love me so that I can learn how to love you. I started to hear the message, and then when I heard the message, I started to feel the message. And when I went to jail and I walked out, You know, the big book that talks about standing at the turning point and asking for his care with complete abandon. That was my turning point, because I went to jail in June of 2018, free of charges, free of any debt that I owed, you know, and I had a choice to make. And I picked up my phone twice. Once was my sponsor, and the other were my friends. I picked up the phone call, and I talked to my sponsor, and I kept trudging this road, right? And since then, I've been welcomed with open arms. I continue to get in the car, you know, even if it's a 4-hour drive, you know. I get to know, the good thing about that is a 3-hour drive really gives you some huge insights on what your friends can really be like, you know, outside of a room, which is great, and I love them. I love them no matter what, right? I love them no matter what. You know, I'm here today, and it's by no other miracle other than the grace of God. Right? I have a life today that I'm living that is beyond my wildest dreams. And I'm going to end with this story real quick. In October of 2017, my dad was begging me and pleading with me to go with him to Mexico. I found every nickel and dime excuse to not go with him anywhere. Either I didn't have a job, I didn't have vacation time, I didn't have money, I didn't have anything to, you know, every excuse to not hang out with my family. Last year around this time, my dad asked me to go to Mexico with him, right? I gladly said yes. I went to the post office, I got my passport, and in this past August, I went and spent 2 weeks in Mexico City with him. I don't understand the language, but I heard the message, I heard the language of the heart, right? Our 2 weeks got cut short by about 3 days because my aunt was passing away. My dad and I returned from Mexico City on August 22nd, and on August 25th, my aunt passed away. My father called me and he said, I'm sorry I couldn't give you the trip that I believe you deserve, right? My response to him was, the trip that you gave me was more than I deserve, because for my entire life, throughout my alcoholism, through my selfishness and my self-centeredness, for the first time in my life, I got to take that man out of that frame of just being a dad who scolded me and who wouldn't let me have things my way. And I thanked him for taking me to Mexico, but most importantly for the time that I had, the period of time that I got to watch him be a brother. I got to watch him be an uncle. I got to watch him be a friend. And those are all things that I would never seen had I not walked into the room of Alcoholics Anonymous, right? So that observation alone, that trip is going to forever be embedded in my mind, right? I have my family back. I have a man who wants to take me places. I have dreams that are actually coming true, right? And that, for this, I'm very grateful. So thank you guys for letting me share.
Okay, God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Now our main speaker will share his experience, strength, and hope with us. Please join me in welcoming Kevin from Cali Vista.
Oh, my name's Kevin. I am an alcoholic. Yeah, it's good to be here, finally, after 4 hours of being in the car. I think Kelly knows that I love to be in bumper-to-bumper traffic, right? She's like, we'll give it to him, you know. I don't know, this is like an 8-hour round trip. I was telling Jeannie, and she's like, well, I went further than that for a drink. And I'm like, damn it. Like, you can't get no sympathy here, right? It's really good to be here. I love Alcoholics Anonymous. I love what it's done to me, and I love what it's done for me, and even more so, I love what it's done to and for my family. You know, and thanks, Susie, for the 10-minute talk. What a great job. You know, I love my friends. I want to thank my friends for coming out with me. First, I got Dan, my sponsor. Thank you for coming out. My buddy Trent. I've known Trent for about 17 years. We've been road dogs doing this deal, you know, for a while. Raphael for meeting us out here in the limo. We should have been in the limo, though. It's the only way he messed up. And Jeannie, it's always good to come out and see you, hon. I love you very much. You know, Jeannie's one of those that, from the gate, you just fall in love, you know. I thank you for your love. You know, that's what we get around here, right? In Alcoholics Anonymous, we get love. I don't know what that feels like when I'm out there, but I know that I need it, and I know it's never the right way. I want to thank Kelly for asking me to come out. I love my friend, too. There's a theme going tonight that every one of my friends keep telling me, tell the truth, tell the truth. As if there's a problem with me telling the truth. Right? So I'm going to tell my truth. The way I see it. Which was never the truth, right? Always complained about living in reality, but it's my reality, not real reality, you know? Oh, you have to unwind. So my sponsor, we go through the coffee place on the way down here. Dutch Boys is a place that I'm a Starbucks fan. They want to go to Dutch Boys. I go to Dutch Boys. I don't know what the hell they gave me, but it had like 15 shots in it or something like that. Reminds me of the good old days when you're wired for sound. You know, I'll get into that. It's just really good to be part of Alcoholics Anonymous and not have to live the way that I used to live, right? And if we're in this room, we know what that means. It's been a good journey. My sobriety date's December 5th of the year 2000. What time do I stop? I know you're going to give me the 5, but about 5 till?
Yeah.
Okay.
55.
Shit, we got time. Just need to, right, come back into the room, you know. Welcome to the newcomers. I'm glad you guys are here. You know what, I'm glad all of us are here, you know, to be part of this thing, part of this gift that we get around here. You know, I don't understand that it's a gift when I first come in here, but today I absolutely know it's a gift. I have a sobriety date of December 5th of the year 2000. You know, just celebrated over 23 years. That was an untruth. I always told from the podium more time than I actually have, so I think they're proud of me. I think last time I spoke, it was 24. This isn't actually that bad, Susie. I spoke out in Laguna at the Canyon Club, and they have one light that's on you, and you can't even see anybody, and it's so bright. It's like a cop interrogating you, you know what I mean? I'm just trying to get the light off, you know, and rush through my story. So this isn't actually that bad, and we got a few people on Zoom. Oh, yeah, so sobriety date's December 5th. Dan's my sponsor. I have the Monday night, same home group as Susie has. I've been going to that meeting for about 6 years now, and I love that meeting. You know, I love the love that I got when I walked into that meeting. Even at having so many years, I connected with that meeting because as soon as we walked in there, we felt the love of the room. You know, this is an active and an involved group, and what that means is we don't only go to meetings. We all show up, we all have commitments there, and we do things outside the meetings. We have gatherings, we have, we just went and seen Jeff Dunham the other night. We do concerts, we do all kinds of stuff. You know, and then we come out and support each other too doing this. You know, we get the honor and the opportunity to come out and speak, and whoever's speaking, we all jump in the car and we all go out. And Susie's right. And you come out to do these spiritual talks and give these spiritual talks, be in the car. It's anything but spiritual, right? I heard more of the F word tonight than I have like all week, you know? We talk about each other. That's what she was referring to. Things that we've done, right? And then we talk about others that ain't in the car, right? Remember Joey? You know what I mean? Yeah, he don't do nothing around here. So we get judgmental and we get to have fun with it, and then we show up here and give spiritual talks, and we jump back in the car and drive home. You know? What a gift. I do love that. What a gift, because it's an absolute gift. It's something I didn't ask for, right? So, prior to my first drink, I don't remember thinking about alcohol one way or another. I was 13 years old. I was over at a buddy's house. His parents left, and we got into the liquor cabinet. What I remember prior to that drink is feeling restless, irritable, and discontent. Like, we talk about that, right? But the way I described it back then is I felt different. I felt not part of. I didn't belong. You know, I had that uncomfortable feeling in me from the gate, you know. I have an older brother. He had two older brothers. They all hung out together. They all drank, and they did this weird thing called smoke weed. And But I don't really remember thinking anything one way or another. And that night, what happened to me is I drank as much as I could, as quick as I could. I don't know why that is then, but I know why it is now. And I got extremely drunk. I got in trouble. His parents came home. They got mad at us. I was supposed to spend the night, and I remember them sending me home, and now my parents are mad at me, and they pushed me off into the bedroom. And I remember flopping back on the bed, and remember the bed flopping around, and I intuitively knew to put one foot on the floor, And I remember getting sick all night long and laying there, and I thought to myself, I will never do this again. Right? But let me back up a little bit. When I got those first couple of drinks in me and I felt that sense of ease and comfort that comes from alcohol for a person like me, my thoughts are, I will never give this up. Right? A few days later, I'm thinking, man, when can I do that again? Because I want to find that sense of ease and comfort. And I developed a thought that alcohol makes me feel better. Right? And at 13 years old, I would go on to chase that feeling until I was 32 years old. Around 15 years old, I developed a small meth problem, and then I stayed up for like 17 years. And I kind of wish I was joking. I kind of wish my whole story was joking, but anyways, we'll get into it. So 15 years old, I find meth. I start doing what we do at 15 years old on meth. I start borrowing from the neighbors, things out of their car, from their house. I start borrowing from my parents. I'm running into conflicts with them. They're telling me to come home and go to bed and eat, and then they're just always on my back. And I feel like I'm always the problem, right? And I really want them to get off my back, And then I start developing problems with the police. I don't like the police. They're always harassing me, like 2 o'clock in the morning. They're, patting me down, trying to get me to give back the stuff that I had borrowed from down the street. And I would go on to live a life. And as it goes through, I fall under this belief that my life is the normal way of living, right? And from there, I drop out of school pretty quick. And I'm drinking and using on a daily basis. Somewhere around 17 and a half years old, I had stayed up way longer than I should have. And I fell out at one house, and I woke up at another house, and I'm on a couch. I don't even know how long I was out. My parents are always on my back and always trying to talk me into coming home and to stop doing the things that I'm doing. And for some reason that day, I called them up, and I asked them if I could come home. And they said, yeah, but we got a place for you to go. And they take me over to the care unit for the first time, and I go in there, and I do a 30-day thing in there. I'm almost 18 years old, and they put me over there with all these adults, like real old people that are like in their 40s, and I'm, and I'm in there, and I'm listening to, they take us to meetings, and they talk to us about alcoholism, but never did it have anything to do with me, right? The solution to all my problems has always been, I take a drink. And it alters and changes my perception. It makes me feel better instantly, right? Even thinking about taking a drink made me feel better. I'm in there, and I remember being in there, and I remember they would gather us up when somebody wanted to leave before their time was up. And I remember sitting there with them. Now, they were losing jobs and families and had problems with DUI, all this stuff that was going on. But none of that had anything to do with me at 17 and a half years old, And I remember sitting there and trying to talk them into staying. And, I'm even quoting steps and things, traditions, and you need to be here. And the only thing I want to do is get out of there and get something to drink, Truth be told, we smoked a lot of weed while we were in there, and that was pretty cool. It kept me there for a while. But none of this has nothing to do with me. They always told me that alcohol was my problem, and I knew better. I knew it was a solution, and I was never going to give that up. I wasn't one that was saying, someday I'm going to quit doing this. I was one that says, someday I'm going to be able to control the trouble I get in, But I don't want to give up that. I got out of there, and I do what I always do. I started drinking and using again immediately. I'm out running around with my friends. I start working in construction companies, which would help me out later in life. And and I'm working at these jobs, and I'm having problems with these jobs immediately because they want you there like Monday through Friday, 8 hours a day, and I'm good for about 2 hours, and I got to go. You know what I mean? I show up on Fridays to get a check, which they don't want to give me one because I haven't worked that week, and I'm having problems with them. I'm still having problems with my parents. It felt like my whole life was nothing but problems with people around me, and 18, almost 19, I end up back in there again for a 45-day stay, and I have the same, the same thing comes to me. This has nothing to do with me. They may have a problem with this, but I surely don't. And I get out of there, and I would go on to just live my life like that until I'm 32 years old. Somewhere around 20 years old, I met her, and I always say we fell in love, but I don't even know that we liked each other. But we drank alike, we used alike, and it was a good idea to have a baby, and we had a baby, and then we got married, and that's all wonderful. But after this first baby was born, Miranda, when I had that little girl, I remember I loved that little girl, right? I loved that little girl. I was going to be a better parent than my parent. I was going to be there for this little kid. Now, at no time did I think I'm going to stop drinking and using. I'm just going to be a better parent, right? And so we have our first daughter, and then a few years later, we have my second daughter, Tori. And I have the same thing. I love these little girls. I wish the love that we have for them was enough to get a person like me to stop living the way I'm living my life. But I don't know that I need a change in life like that, right? I've got it under control. Even though there's a lot of chaos. I don't even really know that there's a lot of chaos, right? I'm with her. I have 2 little kids. I'm having problems with parents. I'm having problems with police. I'm having problems with the job. I hate Edison. Edison, they will come out and take the meter off the house if you don't pay them. I don't like them. The gas company, I'm not real mad at because you can break the metal thing off. I learned real quick to move into duplexes because you can tap into the neighbor's electricity. And then you can tap into their phone. And that's pretty cool unless it rings and you both answer and it's for me. Then we have problems, I don't know about all that. I stop going out my front door. I start going out my back window because I don't want to run into the neighbor and I don't want to run into the landlord. They're always putting notices on my door, like you need to get out. And, we got the police coming. It's like, that's not fair. And then they would do things like, they would give me late charges. As if, right? I can't pay the amount they want. How am I going to pay more than what they want, right? I don't agree with the way they run things. So I'm just in constant conflict, and I'm raising these 2 little girls, and I have this wife, and a few years later, she ends up getting a boyfriend, and I thought that was really rude. And I had a girl I was seeing, but I didn't call her my girlfriend, and I sure didn't leave. Right? So she takes off, and now I have these 2 little girls, and, I'm about 27, 28 years old. I'm working for a company, and we end up getting shipped out to Florida, me and my brother. My brother's a huge part of my life. He was the one that was, once everybody was gone, it came down to me and him. We go on to live a life, and I'll get into that. But we're living out in Florida, and we're working for this company, and we're throwing these big parties, and I've got these 2 little girls, and then she ends up leaving, and I end up bringing I do what I always do. I don't know how your relationships are with your parents, but I think that's one of the requirements is the parents need to be part of they're the problem, right? Because I believe they're the problem, If they would only. So I'm out there, and I end up coming back with these 2 little girls, and I'm living with my parents for a short time, and they end up getting me into a duplex, and I'm unemployable. I can't work anymore, and my brother's out in Florida, and I'm waiting for him to come back. This is my brother at his best. Took him 4 months to drive from Florida to California. Every state was open container and paraphernalia, and they would lock him up. 4 months. But he ended up making it back, and we start our own business. We start robbing stores, and we're doing that. We're doing that on a daily basis. I finally get kicked out of that duplex that I was living in. So now we're living in hotels, motels. I borrow cars, stolen cars. Nothing's mine. You know what I mean? Everything I have is everybody else's. We're committing crimes on a daily basis, and I have these two little girls living with me in these hotels. These two little girls that I absolutely love and adore. These two little girls I'm going to keep with me because I'm going to be their protector. And then one day I end up dropping these little girls off at my parents', and it was months before I even contacted them. You know, because I'm out doing what I'm doing, right? And I want to be there, and I want to be part of these little girls' lives, and I want to have that good relationship with those around me. But I am under the belief that it's all their problems, and now, so me and my brother are out. We had committed a crime. It was about an hour away from where we lived, and I'd like to say that we're really good at what we do, but we ran out of gas. Well, actually, that's not true. At first, so I go into the store to rob the store, and it's a big commercial store, and you can get a lot of stuff there. So I go into this store, and I don't know if that was just tweaking too hard or what it was, but I was in there for like a long time, and then my brother had to go to the bathroom. So finally I grab all this stuff, and I come flying out of the store. Well, I'm flying out one end, and I see my brother walking in the store on the other end. And I'm thinking, what are you doing? You know, I would come out sometimes, and dude would be asleep. And I'm like, dude, you got to be on it better, you know what I mean? And luckily, he left the keys in the car, so I jump in the car, and now I'm circling the crime scene, waiting for my brother to come out. Police are showing up. I'm thinking, this is not good. I'm almost out of gas, so I'm like pumping the pedal, and it was a little while, and I see my dad drive by with my brother in the car, right? He told him that we got in a big old fight, and that's why he had to come pick him up. Thank you, hon. And I believe my life to be the normal way of living, right? I catch up to them. They're getting on the freeway. I catch up to them, and I'm like signaling at my brother, what are you doing, you know? And he's like, oh, there he is. And my dad gets off the freeway. I hit my dad up for some gas money to put in our car, right? And I got to go sell this stuff, right? I got to go sell this stuff. I got to go get what I need to get in order to get right. You know what I mean? And I'm pumping the gas in the car. My dad's talking away, and I'm just trying to, you know, you could leave, bro. You know what I mean? And you got your own car, you know. And my dad says, and this is what caught my attention. He said, "Hey, we're taking the girls. You know, we don't want you up at the house. We don't want you calling the house. We don't want you around them." And I'm like, oh. And there was a few things that hit me at that. One was hatred. One was hatred. And the other one that hit me, and which surprised me, is I thought, it's for the best, right? Like I had a moment of clarity of the way that I'm living my life, because I can only see what I want to see, you know? And I would go on for a little bit longer doing what we're doing and living the way that we're living. And I remember I would drive by my parents' house. They lived in Redlands in a condo, and I would drive by, and they had a little park there. And my hope was to get a glimpse of them outside playing. Right? I'm not the type of person that's ever going to be in these little girls' lives anymore. I'm going to drink and use and the book describes it as going on to the bitter end. I don't even know that that's what it is, but I know that I'm going to live this way until I'm dead. And I know the lifestyle that I'm living, or I'm in prison for the rest of my life, right? And these are the things that under the influence I'm willing to accept. I don't want to live this way, but I'm living this way. You know, and you know, we went on for a little while longer, and I ended up getting picked up one day. It was probably a few years later. It was a few years later. I get picked up for a petty theft and an armed robbery. They hold me over on the petty theft, and they give me 14 days, and I'm in West County jail, the old jail, and I'm doing 14 days up there waiting for them to file the charges on me. They don't file the charges on me. I get out of there, and they let me go. And I do what I always do, and I call these parents up, and I say, hey, can I come home? These are the parents that said, you can never come back over to the house. Don't call us. We don't want to talk to you, right? And they answered the phone that day. I don't know why this is then, but I know why it is today. And I asked them if I could come home, and they said, yeah. And I came home. The very next day, my oldest daughter at the time, her name was Miranda, she asked me if I could take her to the store to get some candy, right? Being the good dad that I am, I hit my dad up for some money to take this little girl to get some candy, right? One of the things that had been going on is my brother had been coming in and out of your guys' program for years. And he had been taking that little girl in and out of your guys' rooms. Alcoholics Anonymous does not work for a guy like me, and this is the thought that I have. But we lived right across the street from the Redlands Unity Club. Do you like the way I said we live in my parents' home? Right? They lived there. I slept on the floor, and my two little girls slept up on the bed. You know what I mean? And this is not my home. So she asked me if I would take her to get this candy. As we're walking through to get over to the store, we get into the parking lot of the Redlands Unity Club, and she said, "Hey, Dad, will you go in here with me?" And that's the only reason I walked into your guys' rooms. You know? God doing for me what I clearly could not do for myself. God orchestrating events in my life to get me exactly where I need to be. I fall into God's grace. I don't even know it. I don't know it. I am under the belief that it's not the first time that God's grace has been extended to me. I'm under the belief that that day I walked in, right? I sat down in your guys' room and I listened to you guys talk, and Susie talked about it, and what I heard was the language of the heart. I started to connect with you guys. I fell under the belief that what you guys were saying was true, but I also fell under the belief that it would never work for a guy like me, right? And I started going to meetings. Me and those two little girls started going to meetings every day over there at that club for three times a day, and we would go over there and we would hit those meetings. I ended up getting a sponsor by the name of Gary Platts, and he was my sponsor for the next 18 years. And after Gary passed, I asked Dan to be my sponsor. You know, and the journey that I have with these two men is unbelievable, and I thank you for that. You know, and Gary was a huge part of my life, and what Gary did was put me right up in the middle of Alcoholics Anonymous. You know, he didn't tell me about it, he showed me. He started taking me to meetings, and the biggest thing that he did for me was he walked me around and introduced me to you, right? And when I'm sitting at home and I'm thinking, man, I'm not going over to that meeting tonight, or I can't go over to that meeting tonight, I think, well, maybe Bob's going to be over there, right? And I'm going to go over and talk to Bob. After 45 days of doing this, Redlands Police Department decided to come bang on my mom and dad's door at like 4 o'clock in the morning, and I know who's banging on the door like that at 4 o'clock in the morning. My mom and dad are sleeping upstairs. I'm downstairs on the floor with these two little girls banging on the door. I go to the door. Who is it? You know what I mean? And Redlands Police Department. My mom and dad come running downstairs. I said, "Mom, it's the police." My mom says, "Go hide." Every resentment I ever had against that woman left, right? I'm like, "I love you, Mom," you know, and I go hide. I've already explained that I'm not a very good criminal. I go upstairs, I go into a bathroom that has no window. It's completely dark in the whole house. And I'm sitting up there for a long time. It felt like a long time. I'm thinking, what the heck's going on, you know? And what I found out later is the police came in and my mom felt intimidated. They said, "Can we search the house?" She said yes, and not sticking to the plan. So those resentments ended up coming back. But so I'm sitting up there for a while, and I'm wondering, did they go back to sleep? You know what I mean? I'm trying to think of all these scenarios. What do I do? I feel if they are in the house, I know they've got guns out, and I know they're looking for me and my brother, right? So I see these flickering lights underneath the door, and I know that they're in the house. I know they got guns out, and I'm thinking, what do? Do you like come out and say hi, you know, or act like I'm sleeping? What are you guys doing here? You know what I mean? I sat there thinking about it long enough. The door comes busting open, guns in my face one more time. Get down, get down, get down. Next thing I know, I'm cuffed up. I'm walking down the stairs. I walk out the front door. I look back. I see my two little girls looking out the window. My mom and dad standing at the door. And my thought is, Alcoholics Anonymous won't even work for me. Where's that come from? Right? Where's that come from? The illness at its best. This thing that has kept me sober for over 45 days. The people that I had met, and my thought is, this won't even work for me. And my next thought is, obviously, because you guys talk a lot about God, God's not going to work for a guy like me. right? And I get locked up and I go up and I start fighting this case and I fight it for about 3 months. They're looking for my brother. They can't find my brother. They end up going down from armed robbery down to a strong arm robbery, and I end up taking a strike, and I end up going to Tehachapi State Prison for the next 21 months. And I'm thinking, how am I going to do this? Little did I know I don't have a choice, right? I'm going to escape, you know what I mean? And then I saw them, and they have rifles and guns, and I thought, 21 months ain't that long. But for the first time, well, I think the worst thing that can happen to such a nice guy like me is our thoughts, right? But what I don't know is that it's the best thing that can happen to a guy like me. For the first time in my life, literally, I could not run from it, right? So I'm up there, and I call my sponsor up, and I'm like, man, they want to give me all this time. What do I do? And, I'm going to have to sign on this. And he's like, well, when you get where you're going, get a book and go to meetings. That's not the answer that I wanted to hear, right? Tell them you're really, really sorry, and maybe they'll let you out. But that's not what he told me. So he told me to get a book, and when I get where I'm going, go to a meeting. What I can come back and report to you is Alcoholics Anonymous is alive and well, right? And I thank God for H&I, for the men and women that would come into that prison and take time out of their lives to sit down with guys like us and share their experience, strength, and hope. Right? And what I don't know is that there's fingerprints and footprints all over my journey. When I look back on it now, I get to see everywhere I was placed, the people that I ran into, even the guards that I dealt with. And it was pretty well known that I was in Alcoholics Anonymous. And I worked up at the front end on this reception where people would come in for visits and things like that. And I worked with some pretty hardcore dudes. And there was a lot of stuff coming in and out of the prison. But these dudes knew that I was in Alcoholics Anonymous. And they're not in the program, but they want me to stay in the program. And they're telling me stuff like, hey, stay away from that side today. We got stuff we're going to do, And I would go to these meetings, and the men and women that would come in and they would share with us. I started getting involved in the meetings. I'm not working I don't know about you guys, but I'm not doing a 4-step in prison. You know what I mean? Let's just give them a map, right? I'm not doing that, but 3:30 Rob Circle K, 4:15 Home Depot. You know what I mean? But I'm going to meetings in there, and I'm staying in the book, and I start reading the stories, and from the stories, I'm connecting with the men and women in this program, right? Their stories and what they're talking about, the language of the heart, still. And I do that, and I'm still under this belief that God is not going to help a guy like me. When I look back over my life and the things that I have done and the people that I have hurt, by this time I'm starting to wake up a little bit to that, the cause that I have, the effect that I have had on other people, right? For some reason, for the first time in my life, I did not play those parents to get money while I was down there. Them taking care of my kids is exactly what I needed them to do. I didn't ask for anything. They would come out and see me about every 3 to 4 months, and man, thank you for that. You know what I mean? I thank them for that. And they would bring those little girls out so I could see them. Things are already starting to change, and I don't even know they're changing. My outlook on life is switching, and I don't know it, and that's an absolute gift because I don't have to know it, and we get the benefit of it, right? I end up doing my time. And what happens to me is right before I got out of there, I had a simple little thought. And the thought was, God is not here to get me out of what I had clearly got myself into. But he had got me through it. And when I look back, I can see that, right? And I got out of there and I started going back to meetings. I went that very night over to the Redlands Unity Club. And thank God they were still sitting there. Gary's still in the room. Bob's still in the room. Gail Marie's still in the room. Mrs., who's somebody that I would meet, and she's still in the room, right? And I started taking these little girls in and out of your guys' room. And I don't know how to be a dad. I'll just be honest with you. I have 2 little girls, and I'm trying to raise these little girls. And I would show up at the meetings, and the men and women, they loved on us. And the women would come up to those little girls, and they would take them out in the other room, and they would have things for them to color on, and they would sit with them, and they would talk with them, and they would tell me things like, bring a brush, and we'll do their little hair, right? And I watched, and then now I'm learning how to do these little girls' hair. And they would tell me funny, well, I thought it was funny, but I don't know if they knew. But they would say, hey, don't put them in polka dots and stripes. Throw a solid in. It's almost like you run in here, right? You run in here, you gain some information, break, and then you run back out there and you try all this stuff, right? It's our little safe haven right here. You know, and I started being a dad to these 2 little girls. A year and a half later, I stand back in front of a judge, and I gain custody back of these 2 little girls. What a gift, right? And I start going on this journey, and things start changing in my life, and I start working these steps, and this is where the real change comes that I get to see, you know? I start doing these steps that I don't understand, I don't think will work, and they have nothing to do with me. I don't, you know. But what I hear you guys, and I hear your experience, and then I want to get that. So, and truth be told, I want to gain what you have without doing the work, right? I just want to get it, you know, and then I have no idea what it is you guys got. But you look a lot happier than me. You know, another thing that always tripped me out when I first got here, when I first got into that room, and I sat down and I listened to everything, I thought we all got there on that same day. And I don't know why that is. I'm like, cool, we like all arrived, you know, and it's the funny little things that our brain comes up with, our thinking comes up, alcoholism comes up with, right? I don't believe this is going to work for me. And I would go on what we call struggling in Alcoholics Anonymous for about the next 7 years. And for some reason, I had this belief that this wasn't working for me, right? And my life has completely changed. A few years after being out of prison, I went and got my contractor's license. And I got a C33 for painting. And then we went down later, me and my brother, and my brother ended up getting sober at that time, and we added a general contracting license. And I still own that business today, you know, and I'm grateful for that. So I'm just doing what we're doing, and we talked a little bit tonight about it, and Susie hit it, is we get in the car. We get in the car. You know, and we would get in the car and we would go hear other speakers, and eventually on in life, you know, we start speaking and getting this gift to be able to come out and do this, you know. I start this business. I've got these 2 little girls. I end up renting my first home with these little girls, and it's actually under my name. I end up buying a car actually under my name. You know, prior to that, I would always rent homes and knew I had to go in and out of the back window. You know, this one I could freely walk in and out because I'm paying rent, you know. Edison's not on my back because I'm paying the bill, right? When I bought cars in the past, I immediately hit them because they were coming to get them, you know. And here's the thing in Alcoholics Anonymous, and you know, all of that, and these are the things that I'm asking for, right? Like when we first get in here and they're like, what do you want in your first 5 years? Like, what do we want? You know what I mean? I want a car. Like in my name, I want a house. I want a wife, you know. The wife didn't work out really well, but I still want it, you know what I mean? And I want a job with a lot of money that I never have to really go there, you know what I mean? And these things are all great. Get sober, you get them. You know, I believe that to be just normal living, right? That's not the gift. I'll give you a little bit of an example for me as what a huge gift is. I have 3 daughters. I have 8 grandkids. 7 of them are granddaughters. That's a lot of girls. They talk a lot. I don't really know what they're saying, but that's a gift, right? And here's the gift: is to be present with them in a room, and I can hear them talking. Prior to that, coming into Alcoholics Anonymous, I just needed people to go away. I could not sit with it. Prior to Alcoholics Anonymous, I needed those two little girls. I don't understand. I can't be here. I got to go get what I need. But today I get to sit with them and be part of them. I have my two granddaughters, Kaylee and Hazel Grace. Kaylee is about 8 years old. She wants a cell phone, right? And she comes to Granddad. You know, how cool is that? And she asked her mom and dad if Granddad could get her a cell phone. Of course, Granddad says yes. I go down and I get her the cell phone. Hazel Grace is 6 years old. You can't get a 6-year-old. Even I know that, right? Like, I want to get it for her. I want to get this little girl a cell phone, but I can't. Anyways, while I'm down there getting the one cell phone for Kaylee, I see these watches that they have, and they're really cool. And they can make 4 or 5 calls on them, right? And we can program who they make calls to. And I get this little girl this little watch, and I get 35 phone calls that day. Right? I answered most of them, right? And most of the time I was in the other room, right? That's a gift. That's the gift. You know, a lot of things have gone on in Alcoholics Anonymous, and a lot of gifts around here. Like I said, our group is very active. We travel a lot. We do a lot of things. Next month, there's about 5 of us. We're going out to the Dominican Republic. And we're going to fly over there for 8 days in a sober trip. You know, a friend of ours in the program puts these on. There's probably about 40 or 60 people that show up to them. I went to it last year up in Cozumel. I got to go out there and spend it with 40 people I didn't even know from the program. By the time I left, everybody has their numbers. We're family, right? That's a gift. You know, prior to coming into Alcoholics Anonymous, nobody could be around me. They just couldn't. Today, I have friends all over. You know, huge home group. We have parties. We have parties up at each other's houses. Our home group for Monday night. We also put on a Wednesday night book study on Zoom, and a lot of home group members are involved in that. And we go through the book. We go through the literature, right? We get the gifts of being able to be part of each other's lives. You know, active and involved in Alcoholics Anonymous in a program that I don't even think that's going to work for me. You know, today I absolutely know 2 things. One is that God is real and Alcoholics Anonymous works. You know, and I've heard that recently a lot, actually recently, even though I've been around here for 23 years. But today, I know when I hear it, it rings true. My life has absolutely changed from the way that I used to live to the way that I get to live today. You know, I get to live with peace of mind, comfortable most of the time in my own skin, right? I don't know what it was that alcohol did for you, but it was the thing that I needed to take just to get out of me, just to get it off, right? Whatever the thing is, I just need to get it off, right? I don't have to live that way today. You know, I get to be present and part of life. And I'm extremely grateful for that. That's why when I'm asked to come out and do things like this, speaking is not one of my favorite things to do. I love to be part of setting up the meeting, cleaning the ashtrays, putting out the cups. But when you ask me to come out and do this, I want to come out and share my story with you. Because it's a story that Alcoholics Anonymous has actually not only changed my life, but it changed those little girls, those little grandkids in my mom and dad's life. You know, my mom and dad went from having to call jails, having to call my friends, having to search for me, and having to find me and wondering if I'm alive. And they would go long periods of time without hearing from me. I come into Alcoholics Anonymous, and my mom and dad sleep at night. Yeah. Right? Selfish and self-centered. You know, that's who I am when I'm out there running around. Today I fully understand that the gift is given to them too. You know, and they don't have to live the way they were living anymore. My mom and dad are not in Alcoholics Anonymous. Later on, my dad would go on. He passed away about 5 or 6 years ago. He passed away, and my sponsor, Gary, passed away at the same time in the same month. And I went and sat with this man. Gary was also Trenton's sponsor, and I walked through this with Trent and Dan. You know, 2 men that I could trust. And I sat down with them, and we loved each other, and we got through this thing, you know. And I'm grateful for that way of living. I'm grateful that I don't have to live the way that I used to live. I'm grateful that my thinking is no longer the way it used to be. I lived my whole life that everybody was out to get me. I lived my whole life that everybody was the problem. And today I'm free from that. Today I don't have to live that way. You know, today we get to go out, we get to be part of life, I get to run this business, I get to be part of these little girls' life. And we live active and involved. I have a very active life, you know. Sometimes I get tired. Like I need a nap, you know what I mean? Which is usually every day from 3 to 4, but anyways. But we get this life today. You know, I didn't come in here and ask for this change. I didn't come in here and ask for this life. I didn't come in here and ask to step into God's grace. But it was given to me by a very loving God. And I'm very, very grateful for that. And I know that the word God has a lot of different meanings for a lot of different people, and a lot of different feelings are stirred up from that. But what I've come to understand is if I come in here and do the things that I'm asked to do, which is in our big book, our 12 steps. If I follow those 12 steps are designed to bring me closer to a higher power and closer to you. I thank you.